are they? Welcome to the Occult Archives. I'm your host and spooky librarian, E.M. Moon, but feel free to refer to me as E. Here lies a space beyond all spaces, a library full of arcane information enough to drive any normal person mad. If you can think of it, if you can question it, the archives probably have what you seek. Tonight's episode takes us back to the 1960s with the first widely publicized case of alien abduction, the Barney and Betty Hill incident. But was it an actual alien abduction or something else entirely? I want to believe, so let's dig into it. The Hills lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Barney was a World War II veteran employed by the United States Postal Service, while Betty was a social worker. Active in the local Unitarian congregation, the Hills were also members of the NAACP and community leaders, and Barney sat on a local board of the United States Commission on Civil Rights. They were an interracial couple at a time when it was particularly uncommon in the United States. Barney was black and Betty was white. Just south of Lancaster, New Hampshire, Betty claimed to have observed a bright point of light in the sky that moved from below the moon and the planet Jupiter upward to the west of the moon. While Barney navigated U.S. Route 3, Betty reasoned that she was observing a falling star, only it moved upward. Because it moved erratically and grew bigger and brighter, Betty urged Barney to stop the car for a closer look, as well as take their dog for a walk, Delcy. Barney stopped at a scenic picnic area just south of Twin Mountain. Betty, looking through binoculars, observed an odd-shaped craft flashing multicolored lights traveling across the face of the moon. Because her sister had several years earlier said she had seen a flying saucer, Betty thought it might be what she was observing. Through binoculars, Barney observed what he reasoned was a commercial airliner traveling toward Vermont on its way to Montreal. However, he soon changed his mind, because without looking as if it had turned, the craft rapidly descended in his direction. This observation caused Barney to realize this object that was a plane was not a plane. The Hills said they continued driving on the quiet and isolated road, moving very slowly through Franconia Notch in order to observe the object as it came even closer. At one point, the object passed above a restaurant and signal tower on top of Cannon Mountain and came out near the old man of the mountain. Betty testified that it was at least 1.5 times the length of the granite cliff profile, which was 40 feet long, and that it seemed to be rotating. The couple watched as the silent, illuminated craft moved erratically and bounced back and forth in the night sky. About 1 mile south of Indian Head, they said the object rapidly descended toward their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. The huge, silent craft hovered about 80 to 100 feet above the Hills' 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air and filled the entire field of view in the windshield. It actually reminded Barney of a huge pancake. Carrying his pistol in his pocket, he stepped away from the vehicle and moved closer to the object. Using the binoculars, Barney claimed to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures who were peering out of the craft's windows, seeming to look at him. In unison, all but one figure moved to what appeared to be a panel on the rear wall of the hallway that encircled the front portion of the craft. The one remaining figure continued to look at Barney and communicated a message telling him to stay where you are and keep looking. Barney had a recollection of observing the humanoid forms wearing glossy black uniforms and black caps. Red lights on what appeared to be bat-wing fins began to telescope out of the sides of the craft, and a long structure descended from the bottom. The silent craft approached to what Barney estimated was within 50 to 80 feet overhead and 300 feet away from him. Barney, fearing being captured by these creatures, ran back to the car terrified. As the Hills sped away, they heard a strange beeping sound and they fell into a daze. When they awoke, they realized they were now just outside of Concord. On October 21, 1961, Barney reported to NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, investigator Walter Webb, that the beings were somehow not human. Arriving home at about dawn, the Hills stated that they had some odd sensations and impulses they could not readily explain. Betty insisted their luggage be kept near the back door rather than in the main part of the house. Their watches would never work again. Barney said that the leather strap for the binoculars was torn, though he could not recall it tearing. The toes of his best dress shoes were scraped, and Barney says he was compelled to examine his genitals in the bathroom, though he found nothing unusual. They took long showers to remove possible contamination, and each drew a picture of what they had observed. Perplexed, the Hills said they tried to reconstruct the chronology of events as they witnessed the UFO and drove home, but immediately after they heard the buzzing sounds, their memories became incomplete and fragmented. After sleeping for a few hours, Betty awoke and placed the shoes and clothing she had worn during the drive into her closet, observing that the dress was torn at the hem, zipper, and lining. Later, when she retrieved the items from her closet, she noted a pinkish powder on her dress. She hung the dress on her clothesline and the pink powder blew away, but the dress was irreparably damaged. She ended up throwing it away, but then changed her mind, retrieved the dress, and hung it in her closet again. Over the years, 5 laboratories have conducted chemical and forensic analyses on the dress. There were shiny, concentric circles on their car's trunk that had not been there the previous day. Betty and Barney experimented with a compass, noting that when they moved it close to the spots, the needle would whirl rapidly. But when they moved it a few inches away from the shiny spots, it would drop down. Walter N. Webb, a Boston astronomer and NICAP member, met with the Hills on October 21, 1961. In a 6-hour interview, the Hills related all they could remember of the UFO encounter. Barney stated that he had developed a mental block and that he suspected there were some portions of the event that he did not wish to remember. He described in detail all that he could remember about the craft and the appearance of the somehow not human figures aboard it. Webb stated that they were telling the truth and the incident probably occurred exactly as reported, except for minor uncertainties and technicalities that must be tolerated in any such observation where human judgment is involved. For example, exact time and length of visibility, apparent sizes of object and occupants, distance and height of object, etc. 10 days after the alleged UFO encounter, Betty began having a series of vivid dreams, which continued for 5 successive nights. She stated that she experienced them with a degree of detail and intensity that she had never had before. After the 5th night, they stopped and never recurred, though they occupied her thoughts during the day. When she mentioned them to Barney, he was sympathetic, but not too concerned, and the matter was dropped. Betty did not mention them to Barney again. In November 1961, Betty began writing down the details of her dreams. In one dream, she and Barney encountered a roadblock and men who surrounded their car. She lost consciousness but struggled to regain it. Then she realized that she was being forced by 2 small men to walk in a forest at night, and of seeing Barney walking behind her, though when she called to him, he seemed to be in a trance or sleepwalking. The men stood about 5 feet to 5 feet 4 inches tall and wore matching blue uniforms with caps similar to those worn by military cadets. They appeared nearly human, with black hair, dark eyes, prominent noses, and bluish lips. Their skin was a grayish color, however. She and Barney were taken to their car, where the leaders suggested that they wait to watch the craft's departure. They did so, and then resumed their drive home. On November 25, 1961, the Hills were again interviewed at length by NICAP members, this time C.D. Jackson and Robert E. Homan. Having read Webb's initial report, Jackson and Homan had many questions for the Hills. One of their main questions was about the length of the trip. Although the Hills had noted that they had arrived home later than anticipated, the 178-mile drive should have taken about 4 hours, they did not realize that they had arrived home 7 hours after their departure from Colebrook. When Homan and Jackson noted this discrepancy to the Hills, the couple had no explanation, a phenomenon ufologists call missing time. The Hills claimed to recall almost nothing of the 35 miles of U.S. Route 3 between Lincoln, Indian Head, and Ashland. Both claimed to recall an image of a fiery orb sitting on the ground. Betty and Barney reasoned that it must have been the moon, but Homan and Jackson informed them that the moon had set earlier in the evening. The subject of hypnosis came up, and it was decided that it should be carried out in order to recover previously irretrievable memories. Barney was apprehensive, but thought it might help Betty put to rest what Barney described as the nonsense about her dreams. On November 23, 1962, the Hills attended a meeting at the parsonage of their church, where Captain Ben H. Sweat of the United States Air Force was a guest speaker. Having had an interest in hypnosis, the Hills approached Sweat privately and related their strange encounter. Sweat was particularly interested in the missing time of the Hills' account. The Hills asked if he would hypnotize them to recover their memories, but Sweat declined and cautioned them against going to an amateur hypnotist, such as himself. Eventually, the couple underwent hypnosis with Dr. Benjamin Simon. Barney's sessions. Under hypnosis with Dr. Benjamin Simon, as was consistent with his conscious recall, Barney reported that the binocular strap had broken when he ran from the UFO back to his car. He recalled driving the car away from the UFO, but afterward he felt irresistibly compelled to pull off the road and drive into the woods. He eventually sighted 6 men standing on the dirt road. The car stalled, and 3 of the men approached the car. Barney described the beings as generally similar to Betty's hypnotic recollection. He said the beings stared into his eyes with a terrifying, mesmerizing effect. Under hypnosis, Barney said, "Oh, those eyes. They're there in my brain," from his first hypnosis session. And, "I was told to close my eyes because I saw 2 eyes coming close to mine, and I felt like the eyes had pushed into my eyes," from his second hypnosis session. And, "All I see are these eyes. I'm not even afraid that they're not connected to a body. They're just there. They're just up close to me, pressing against my eyes." While Betty reported a conversation with the leader in English, Barney said that he heard them speaking in a mumbling language he did not understand. Betty also mentioned this detail. The few times they communicated with him, Barney said it seemed to be thought transference. At the time, he was unfamiliar with the word telepathy. Betty's sessions. Under hypnosis, Betty's account was similar to her 5 dreams about the UFO abduction, with some notable differences, mainly pertaining to her capture and release. Also, the technology on the craft was different. The short men differed significantly in physical appearance, and the sequential order of the abduction differed. Barney's and Betty's memories and hypnotic regression were, however, consistent with one another. When the series of hypnosis sessions were complete, Simon wrote an article about the Hills for the journal Psychiatric Opinion, explaining his conclusion that the case was a singular psychological aberration. The Hills went back to their regular lives. They were willing to discuss the alleged UFO encounter with friends, family, and the occasional UFO researcher, but the Hills apparently made no effort to seek publicity. On October 25, 1965, a front-page story in the Boston Traveler asked, "UFO Chiller, did they seize couple?" Reporter John H. Luttrell of The Traveler had allegedly been given an audio tape recording of the lecture the Hills had made in Quincy Center in late 1963. Luttrell learned that the Hills had undergone hypnosis with Simon. He also obtained notes from confidential interviews the Hills had given to UFO investigators. On October 26th, United Press International picked up Luttrell's story, and the Hills earned international attention. In 1966, writer John Fuller secured the cooperation of the Hills and Simon and wrote the book The Interrupted Journey about the case. The book included a copy of Betty's sketch of the star map and was a quick success and went through several printings. Unfortunately, Barney died of a cerebral hemorrhage on February 25, 1969 at age 46, after which Betty went on to become a celebrity in the UFO community. Betty died of cancer on October 17, 2004 at age 85, never having remarried. Now let's talk a little bit about the star map that Betty drew. In 1968, Marjorie Fish of Oak Harbor, Ohio, read Fuller's book Interrupted Journey. Fish was an elementary school teacher and amateur astronomer. Intrigued by the star map, Fish wondered if it might be deciphered to determine which star system the UFO came from. Assuming that one of the 15 stars on the map must represent Earth's sun, Fish constructed a 3-dimensional model of nearby sun-like stars, i.e. stars deemed to have characteristics that could support life, such as that found on Earth. She used thread and beads, basing stellar distances on those published in the 1969 Gleiss Star Catalog. Studying thousands of vantage points over several years, the only one that seemed to match the Hill map was from the viewpoint of the double star system of Zeta Reticuli, about 39 light-years from Earth. Fish sent her analysis to Webb. Agreeing with her conclusions, Webb sent the map to Terence Dickinson, editor of the magazine Astronomy. Dickinson did not endorse Fish and Webb's conclusions, but for the first time in the journal's history, astronomy invited comments and debate on a UFO report, starting with an opening article in the December 1974 issue. For about a year afterward, the opinions page of Astronomy carried arguments for and against Fish's star map. Notable was an argument made by Carl Sagan and Stephen Soter, arguing that the star map was little more than a random alignment of chance points. In an episode of Cosmos in 1980, Sagan demonstrated that without the lines drawn in the maps, the Hill map bore no resemblance to the real-life map. In contrast, those more favorable to the map, such as David Saunders, a statistician who had been on the Condon UFO study, disagreed. Saunders claimed that a match among 16 stars of the specific spectral type among the 1,000 stars nearest the Sun is at least 1,000 to 1 against. In the early 1990s, the European Hipparcos mission, high-precision parallax collecting satellite, measured the distance to more than 100,000 stars around the Sun more accurately than had previously been done. It showed that some of the stars in Fish's interpretation of the map were in fact much farther away than previously thought. Other research revealed that some stars counted by Fish as likely to host life would have had to be excluded by her own criteria, while some other stars which had been discounted by Fish had been recognized as potential abodes for life. Results such as these led Fish herself to reject her hypothesis in a public statement. Now a little bit about the book Interrupted Journey. The 1966 publication of Interrupted Journey by John G. Fuller details much of the Hill's claims. Excerpts of the book were published in Look magazine. Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience by Betty Hill's niece Kathleen Marden further explored Fuller's themes along with scientist Stanton T. Friedman. Marden, who sat on the board of the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, for 10 years, knew Betty well and had spoken with her at great length about the encounter. Of course, as always, there are rebuttals. Jim McDonald, a resident of the area in which the Hills claim to have been abducted, has produced a detailed analysis of their journey, which concludes that the episode was provoked by their misperceiving an aircraft warning beacon on Cannon Mountain as a UFO. McDonald notes that from the road the Hills took, the beacon appears and disappears at exactly the same time the Hills described the UFO as appearing and disappearing. The remainder of the experience is ascribed to stress, sleep deprivation, and false memories recovered under hypnosis. After reading McDonald's recreation, UFO expert Robert Schaefer writes that the Hills are the poster children for not driving when sleep deprived. In The Skeptical Inquirer, Schaefer also wrote, "I was present at the National UFO Conference in New York City in 1980, at which Betty presented some of the UFO photos she had taken. She showed what must have been far more than 200 slides, mostly of blips, blurs, and blobs against a dark background. These were supposed to be UFOs coming in close, chasing her car, landing, etc. After her talk had exceeded about twice its allotted time, Betty was literally jeered off the stage by what had been at first a sympathetic audience. This incident, witnessed by many of ufology's leaders and top activists, removed any lingering doubts about Betty's credibility. She had none." In 1995, Betty Hill wrote a self-published book, A Common Sense Approach to UFOs. It is filled with delusional stories, such as seeing entire squadrons of UFOs in flight and a truck levitating above the freeway. Schaefer later wrote that as late as 1977, Betty Hill would go on UFO vigils at least 3 times a week. One evening, she was joined by UFO enthusiast John Oswald. When asked about Betty's continuing UFO observations, Oswald stated, "She is not really seeing UFOs, but she is calling them that." On the night they went out together, Mrs. Hill was unable to distinguish between a landed UFO and a streetlight. In a later interview, Schaefer recounts that Betty Hill wrote, "UFOs are a new science, and our science cannot explain them." Robert Schaefer released 48 pages of archived documents relating to Betty and Barney Hill, Benjamin Simon, and Philip J. Klass on the internet on December 23, 2015. In his 1990 article, Entirely Unpredisposed, Martin Kottmeyer suggested that Barney's memories revealed under hypnosis might have been influenced by The Bolero Shield, an episode of the science fiction anthology series The Outer Limits, which had been broadcast on February 10, 1964, about 2 weeks before Barney's first hypnotic session. The episode features an unnamed extraterrestrial with large eyes who says, in all the universes, in all the unities beyond the universes, all who have eyes that speak. The report from the regression featured a scenario that was in some respects similar to the television show. In part, Kottmeyer wrote, "Wraparound eyes are an extreme rarity in science fiction films. I know of only one instance. They appeared on the alien of an episode of an old TV series, The Outer Limits, titled The Bolero Shield. A person familiar with Barney's sketch in The Interrupted Journey, and the sketch done in collaboration with the artist David Baker, will find a frisson of déjà vu creeping up his spine when seeing this episode. The resemblance is much abetted by an absence of ears, hair, and nose on both aliens. Could it be by chance? Consider this. Barney first described and drew the wraparound eyes during the hypnosis session dated the 22nd of February 1964. The Bolero Shield was first broadcast on the 10th of February 1964. Only 12 days separate the two instances. If the identification is admitted, the commonness of wraparound eyes in the abduction literature falls to cultural forces. When a different researcher asked Betty about the Outer Limits, she insisted she had never heard of it. Kottmeyer also pointed out that some motifs in the Hills account were present in the film Invaders from Mars of 1953. In 2012, Jason Colavito pointed out that in fact the Bolero Shield was the least important of 3 Outer Limit episodes that aired in the weeks prior to Barney Hill's February 22, 1964, recovery of gray alien memories. The episodes of February 3rd and February 17th were even more reminiscent of Hill's story. The episode of February 3rd, 1964, titled The Invisibles, featured an alien intelligence which orchestrates a conspiracy of human hosts, parasited by the alien organism, and willing servants. The process of becoming a servant involves lying face down on a table and having one's lower back scratched with a scalpel, then having an alien organism placed in the wound to see if it will attach. The surgical procedure is narrated in detail by an alien instructor and is shown 3 times, although the camera sees only the protagonist's naked upper body and gritted teeth. Colavito states that the surgical scenes, including the partial nudity, recall the anal alien probing described by Barney Hill. The episode of February 17, 1964, titled The Children of Spider County, featured a storyline involving the abduction of 4 men by an alien with wraparound eyes, which glow menacingly. Early in the episode, the protagonist's car is stopped, in fact wrecked, by the alien. The protagonist has always belonged to a socially outcast group. Eventually, it is revealed that the protagonist is half alien himself. He is accompanied by his girlfriend, over the disapproval of her father. Colavito suggests that these similarities to Barney Hill's own biography go beyond coincidental, and encouraged him to mingle the more fantastical elements of the story into his hypnosis-induced recollections. The Children of Spider County aired 5 days before Hill's February 22nd hypnosis session. Meanwhile, Colavito also relates the Hills' recovered memories of aliens in shiny black jackets to the Twilight Zone episode of January 31, 1964, titled Black Leather Jackets, in which 3 aliens disguised as humans in black leather jackets come to Earth, but one of them falls in love with a human girl. Coincidentally, Lee Kinsolving plays the alien in love with a human girl in both The Children of Spider County and Black Leather Jackets. Most recently, an article on CNN written in 2023 by John Blake titled, "They Told a Famous Story About Being Abducted by Space Aliens. A New Book Says It's Really About Racism," delves deeper into what might have really been the truth surrounding this case. Blake writes, "There is the sound of fear in a voice, a sudden gasp, a stutter or suppressed scream. And then there is the sound of a stark terror, an adult losing all control, blubbering and gasping for breath like a kid facing their worst nightmare. That sound of unimaginable terror is what a psychiatrist recorded when he put a man named Barney Hill under hypnosis in his office one day in 1964. Hill was a World War II vet, a big guy with a Darth Vader baritone voice and an IQ of 140. But when the psychiatrist asked him to relive a fateful night 3 years earlier, he broke down in hysterical sobbing. He said he and his wife Betty were tracked by a mysterious light on an isolated highway in the New Hampshire mountains one night and abducted by humanoid creatures in a UFO who forced them to undergo medical examinations. The story Hill told would become arguably the most famous UFO abductee story ever. One historian said the Hills were the Adam and Eve of alien abduction stories. The couple's tale was turned into a best-selling book and a movie starring James Earl Jones, and it has provided the template for nearly every depiction of an alien encounter in pop culture since. A new book, however, claims that the story isn't so much about aliens as it is about race. The Hills, an interracial couple who were also civil rights activists, told a story that reflected their growing disenchantment with the slow progress of the civil rights movement, says the historian Matthew Bowman in The Abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, Alien Encounters, Civil Rights, and the New Age in America. As America prepares to celebrate Halloween, Bowman's book offers an unexpected racial dimension to the famous story. He and others have recast it as one of the spookiest stories about racism in American history. Bowman said in a recent interview that Barney Hill's struggles with racism as a black man in the mid-20th century were a deep part of his encounter. Hill was an NAACP leader in New Hampshire at the time of his purported abduction. His white wife was also a civil rights activist and a social worker. When he is hypnotized and recovers all these memories, the language he uses is really colored by fear of racial persecution. Bowman said in the recent interview. Both Hills recalled the encounter under hypnosis, but Barney Hill grew terrified reliving the event. At one point, he sobbed as he recounted the UFO closing in on him, saying, "God, what is it? God, I'm scared." The Hills story changed the way people regarded alien encounters. Before their story, most people reported friendly encounters with UFOs and aliens. Consider the noble and sagacious alien visitor portrayed in the hit 1951 movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. But the Hills added an element of horror to these stories, including details such as gray-skinned aliens with large heads and black eyes, missing periods of time, and forced medical examinations. These elements became staples in movies like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and TV shows like The X-Files. But the racial element to the Hills story was always present, some noted, suggesting that it reflected their subconscious fears. The year Hill was put under hypnosis was 1964, a year when racial and Cold War tensions were simmering in the United States. You have a biracial couple at a time where obviously it was not easy to be a biracial couple. Christopher Bader, a professor of sociology at California's Chapman University, said in one interview, "Look what those aliens were, a mixture of black and white. I find that very meaningful." Another essayist said the couple's story resembled a Gothic horror novel. The account fit squarely in the Western narrative tradition, with a dark night, ghostly apparitions, and sexual undercurrent. It had many Victorian Gothic hallmarks, and it shared the common Western folklore theme of being spirited off and ravished by an otherworldly creature, Margaret Fox said in an essay for the New York Times. The Hills stuck by their story despite doubts from scientists. Barney Hill died of a stroke in 1969, and Betty continued to claim that the abduction occurred. She died in 2004. As time goes on, their story may be less known as a UFO abductee tale and more as something from a different genre. Horror, reflected in movies such as Candyman and Get Out, that probe racial fears. These movies reflect an experience that Barney Hill and other people of color know well. There are times when you spark terror in people because they see you as an alien. Barney and Betty Hill's story appeared in many non-fictional accounts, such as an episode of To Tell the Truth, which aired on December 12, 1966. In 2004, Betty Hill's niece Kathleen Martin, with nuclear physicist and ufologist Stanton Friedman, authored Captured concerning the case. A fact-based account appears in the 2023 Dark Horse comic series Blue Book 1961, written by James Tinian IV, with art by Michael Avon Oeming. The alleged abduction is the touchstone that historian Matthew Bowman uses in his 2023 book, The Abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, Alien Encounters, Civil Rights, and the New Age in America, to explore the zeitgeist of the times. I would actually love to read that book. I need to get my hands on it. In fiction, it appeared in things like the 1975 film The UFO Incident, which was a television dramatization of the Hills abduction and its aftermath, in which the Hills are played by James Earl Jones and Estelle Parsons. The purported event, as well as other UFO lore figures, into the 2012 comic book series Saucer Country, scripted by Paul Cornell. The ancient star maps shown at the beginning of the 2012 film Prometheus are based on the star map drawn by Betty Hill and depicted the Zeta Reticuli system. I did not know that. That's cool. In 2018, the story formed the basis of the Dinner Party, a virtual reality exhibit at the traveling art show Wonder Spaces. The 9th episode of the 2019 History Channel television series Project Blue Book, entitled Abduction, is based on the Betty and Barney Hill UFO incident. I've seen that. The track The Ballad of Betty and Barney Hill from Angela D. Augustine's 2023 album Toil and Trouble recounts the incident from the point of view of an alien traveling through the White Mountains to Zeta Reticuli. Actors Demi Moore and Coleman Domingo are set to portray Betty and Barney in the upcoming film Strange Arrivals, directed by Roger Ross Williams based on the case. I didn't know that either, and that's pretty cool. I'm going to watch that. So all in all, what do you guys think about this case? Do you think it was real alien abductions, or do you think it was, like they said, lack of sleep, under a lot of stress? Were the hypnosis just actual recounting of the day-to-day turmoil that they dealt with being an interracial couple in the peak of the civil rights movement? I would like to believe that it was alien abductions, because a lot of us want to believe that. You know, if you're anything like Mulder, you want to believe. And it's one of those things where it's just that you want to believe. And so you suspend your disbelief long enough to go, okay, yeah, this could be credible. This could actually have happened. You know, even the weird powder that was on Betty's dress. I know that some of these UFO shows that have featured the case talk about that a little more in depth, where I think they actually even they cut out a square from the dress to test all of that, but everything was inconclusive, you know. And the fact that he passed so early on and she carried on like she did to a point where people stopped taking her seriously, I think may have been based on her grief of losing her husband after everything that they've gone through. So was it an actual alien abduction, or is it misremembering things that actually happened, or placing things where they don't belong because it gives you answers to things you can't answer? The thing is, we'll never know. They've both passed. You know, the research is still out there. I actually was looking at a website where they literally have everything still documented and put away, but I don't know if it's accessible to the public, so we likely will never know. But do you believe in aliens? I like to believe in aliens. I think that the universe is far too vast for us to be the only intelligent species out there. Are they close by? Most likely not. Can they reach us physically? I also don't think so, because why we cannot fathom that sort of technology. Maybe there is, you know, a species out there that can, but most likely I think what we do see, if we see aircrafts that are actually UFOs, or what are they calling them, unidentified aerial phenomena now, most likely are unmanned. If something is manning them, you know, at the helm, it's probably being remotely done, because as far as we know, any sort of organic life that's complex like us cannot survive that long in space for many, many reasons, you know, including radioactivity and just weightlessness, all of that. But I will talk about this forever, so I have to cut myself off, or I will just ramble on, and you guys will probably just click stop on this because you're tired of listening to me ramble. But that's the end of tonight's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any UFO stories of your own, anything that you might have seen, any sightings or encounters, I would love to hear them. I believe that the website still has a place for where you can submit your stories. If not, I will get that back up there. So if you do have stories, send them my way. But that's all for tonight. I want to take a moment to plug a couple things, because I have the platform to do so, even though I don't have as many listeners as I would like, but I know you guys will find me eventually. So the first thing I want to plug is this crazy new coolness called Big Saturday Morning Co. So if you're a big fan of cartoons from the 80s and the 90s, that nostalgia of times past, especially for us millennials, you're going to love what Big Saturday Morning Co. has coming. I can't give you a lot of detail yet, but I can tell you that it's going to be awesome, and you should follow them on social media. You can go to bigsaturdayMorningCo.com and bookmark that so you can check it out while you're there. There's links for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so you can go follow them there. My twin, one of my really close friends, is putting this whole thing together, and I know some of the secrets, but I'm not going to tell you because I can't tell you. But you're going to love it. So if you like nostalgia and you like all those old school cartoons, you like some Ninja Turtles and some old school Nickelodeon cartoons and, fun Disney stuff, you're definitely going to want to check this out. The second thing I want to plug is music. It's not mine, but I don't know if any of you ever heard of the artist Witches, Witchz, but his music is fucking incredible. And I am now part of the Witches Cult Street Team. So any chance I get, I'm trying to spread the dark word of witches. If you're a fan of... The genre is kind of complicated because he's so multifaceted and talented, but kind of like dark wave, indie, alternative, EDM, old school goth. Like, it's just a combination of just incredible beats that he puts together. He also plays guitars and has the most mesmerizing, just the vocal fry on that man. His vocals are fucking intense. But he is incredible. His music is incredible. He just did a U.S. tour in 2024. He did a European tour this year. And next year, he's doing a world tour, which I'm absolutely going to be attending wherever it is that I'm going to attend. But you should check him out on social media and give his music a listen because you will fall in love. I heard one little snippet back in 2023, went and looked up the entire discography and have been playing it on repeat ever since then. Like, I can't stop listening to him. I listen to him all day, every day. You can find him on Instagram. You can find him on TikTok. You can find him on Facebook. You can go to his website, witchesmusic.com. So WITCHZ music.com, and check out everything there. He's usually Witches Music on all socials. So if you type that in, he will pop up. And if you like masked men or masked musicians, you're going to love him. He's incredible. So go check that out and follow and like and subscribe wherever you listen to music, YouTube, Spotify, whatever. Do all that thing. So those are my 2 plugs for the evening. Besides, you guys should read my books, inkit.com/emmoon, because that's why I do all of this. I want to be a writer. I'm a storyteller, and I ramble when I talk, but it's different when I write. So you should go check all those things out for me because you're all amazing, and I love you, and I hope you all are staying safe in these really hard times, and I hope that this podcast can be a little bit of a respite from reality, kind of get your head out of the day-to-day chaos and trouble and just relax a little bit and listen to my voice because some say it's soothing. I don't know. I don't hear it. But if you like it, that's all that matters. And I love you. That's all for tonight's episode. If you'd like to support the archives, you can do so by visiting our Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/InkDrinkerArchives. You can also find the archives on most social media platforms at Ink Drinker Archives or the Occult Archives with author E.M. Moon on Facebook. As always, I'll leave you with this reminder. Lock your doors, salt your windows, and remember, it's okay to sleep with the lights on.